In this second video, I'm going to talk a little bit about open data principles and practices as they've been put forth by governments and by other organizations, and how they can help ensure that open data really is put to use as well as it can be. So a number of governments and other organizations have now put forward open data principles, which are really kind of rules of the road for how they believe data should be released in open ways that will make it usable and really help realize the maximum value from the data. One of your readings is the U.S. Open Data Policy, often known as M1313, which is the number of the memo that was released by the Office of Management and Budget, which is, I think, one of the first places that you really see a very thorough kind of elucidation of not only the principle that government agencies in the U.S. should make their data open unless there are privacy or security reasons not to, but also what that openness means. For example, there's a strong emphasis here and in many other documents on machine readability. This is the idea that data that's published online should be available in a form that a computer can read and analyze, not just be readable by ordinary humans. Now, while this may seem somewhat obvious, there are many, many data sets, including in the US and other countries with fairly advanced technology, that are still available online only in PDFs and really cannot be used without a laborious process of putting them into a CSV file or some other form that can be analyzed easily in a computerized kind of way. So that policy and many others like it around the world and in states in the U.S. at a subnational level have been very important in kind of setting some of the standards for how data should be released to be useful as open data. On the other end of the spectrum, the Open Data Charter principles are very, very high level. They're just a half dozen principles that are really just more kind of big picture in terms of the way governments should think about data and treat their data with an eye towards making it both technically and legally open. This is a set of principles that this organization, the Open Data Charter, is now getting many countries to sign on to as a kind of commitment and their commitment to openness. So we see with these principles and guidelines some real commitment both to the idea of openness and to ways to make it happen. But these things do not always work out in practice. The Economist article that's in your reading talks about ways, and interestingly, this article came out fairly early. It came out in 2015, but already at that point, when in many ways the open data movement was just getting underway, there were already people saying, "Well, it's been overrated already," because there were some early promises, and you'll see some of these, for example, in the McKinsey study in the second week's reading, that implied that this was going to be a very that there might be more here than has been realized to date. So the kinds of issues that the Economist article notes are that much data that's published is not really very valuable because a government agency may have thought it was useful, but in practice it's really not that useful. That there are also issues of privacy and other kinds of issues of usability. So data can be useful but not very usable. Which happens if you have valuable data, but it's put out there in ways that are hard to find or not machine readable, and so on. So the final reading for this week, which is a report on roundtables that my organization held with the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, looks at a number of those issues really in the construct of the open data lifecycle or the data lifecycle management, and tries to come up with a number of best practices that can address these issues. So any of these issues, whether it's machine readability, accessibility, privacy protection, really, they're all amenable to a best practices kind of approach. And I think what a lot of people are now trying to do in the open data field is to figure out how do we develop best practices that help make these principles a reality.